All right. And here we are. We're live. Hello, Bianca. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Ludo?
Very good. Very good. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this new episode of Campfire. Uh, Today is episode 83. And if you're watching us or listening to us live, you should know that you can engage with us, ask any questions you may have for Bianca or myself. We're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And on any of those platforms, you should have a chat window. So don't hesitate. Go there, type in your question. We'll actually answer you as we go through that conversation. There's also a fancy way or funky way of joining us. You could actually join us on the stage with Bianca and myself. As long as you have a webcam on, the microphone on, you'll be able to actually ask your question live. Now there was a little bit of a scare earlier. I did not push the button when I was supposed to push it, and so that stream was just published on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So I don't know how many people have seen it. I see the counter here; it's like a little bit lower than what we usually have, but I hope folks are going to be able to find it and join us. All right. With that said, Bianca, again, thank you so much for joining. Um, Once in a while we have an actual student joining us to tell our story, and so that's going to be one of those times. Other times we have instructors or advisors that are having a stream with the audience. But having a student talk about their journey is always very special, very inspiring, and I think your story is going to be inspiring for a lot of students or people who are thinking about joining, women as well. You've had a really interesting role in the community in Cleveland and elsewhere in Ohio. So thank you. Would you mind starting by introducing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Bianca Ploss. I am a full stack software developer at the Davy Tree Expert Company. I work on a little program called iTree Tools. Um, and it's been a heck of a journey getting here, thanks to many different sources, including Nucamp.
Okay, great. And so, um, when did you join Nucamp, and when did you graduate?
So it was back in June 2023 that I started,
Yeah.
and I never graduated. I am still pending. I was hungry for the interview process a few months in, and I got my job, and here I am.
So this is
It's
great. So I think for me, this is kind of the equivalent of dropping out of Stanford or Harvard. You don't actually need to attend that much. The fact that you got in was already a demonstration of your capabilities. But yeah, I mean it's already that data point is encouraging for folks. There are people out there that are starting their journey in tech. Although I know you had a little bit of a leg up. We'll get to that, um, and finding a job. So that's encouraging. Let's actually start from the beginning. That's what I really like to do here is to have you share your journey from actually the days of high school, if needed, and really understanding how you got into tech or how you did not get into tech in the first place and what brought you here. So, do you mind actually sharing with us, um, what were your interests in high school, for example, and where did you go for college, and what skills did you learn? And was coding at the time something that was on your mind, or were you really prepared to do something completely different?
Sure, yeah. So in high school, I was so dead set on doing pre-med. I wanted to be a
Ooh.
doctor. My mom was a nurse at the time, an RN, and my uncle is a software developer. And I saw like these different careers, and I just had a lot of interest in the medical field. Something about just the constantly learning, constantly developing. Um, I ended up sticking with that mindset up into college. And I was a semester in, and I decided after taking a biology and chemistry class that science was not for me, not for the long
Oh,
run. So um, at that time, I didn't know what to do because I was so dead set on that one career. And my boyfriend at the time mentioned, "Oh, well, you took an art class once, right?" And I like, "Yeah." He's like, "You like that, didn't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, like, I guess." He's like, "Why don't you just go for an art degree?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess that's better than just a general business degree." So that's what I went with. Um, I took my general eds, but I ended up going into metalsmithing.
Oh,
Which
wow.
yeah, which is very fun. That's definitely
So did you
definitely
create art out of metal?
yeah, yeah. So
Oh, wow.
it was mainly geared towards jewelry making. The program,
Okay.
University of Akron.
Hmm.
So it was a 4-year degree, and it was a all-encompassing studio art degree with a concentration in metalsmithing. So I was able to get my hands in a lot of different things, which
Oh,
is something
nice.
that I need as a person. I need to constantly have new things to learn. I
Yeah.
can't stagnate. So I got to do things like painting and drawing, and I did some graphic design. So I got more familiar with computers in that regard. And then my favorites were sculpture and metalsmithing. Those were the best.
So
Oh, and some photography as
I
well.
want to know. So hold on, before we say, I'm going to say hi to Ludovic, which is like my first name but spelled differently, and I've never seen it spelled like that. So I'm super curious. Ludovic, Q-U-E, which will be also a French spelling. Really interesting. So Ludovic, yes, 2023, it is crazy finding a gig uh, right before the end of a boot camp in that year is a real fit. So I'm really curious now. I want to know what jewelry did you create out of metal, and can you show us anything?
Oh, yeah, I can. I actually have a piece if you give me a
Oh
moment.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was
Grab it.
mostly sculptural stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, hang on one moment.
this is unscripted, folks. All live. We didn't know any of this in advance. All right, and don't forget. Yeah, there you go. The mic.
There we go. Okay. It's a little delicate right now because it was made 7 years ago. But I did this jewelry
Oh
piece.
wow.
Oh, yeah, that's
Oops.
the delicate bit. But
So
yeah, so these are
this is metal.
anodized. Yes, this is aluminum. Uh,
The level of
oh,
detail
good.
is really striking.
Thank you. Yeah, these
So
are
that's
anodized
multiple
aluminum
layers.
macaws. Yep.
Yeah.
So you make it with a jeweler's saw. So I used Adobe Illustrator, and I made
So
some
the actual
templates.
sewing is automated, or do you have to
Nope,
do it?
this is by
Oh,
hand. Yep, yep.
all
So
by
it's like
hand.
a very fine, like
Yeah, yeah, I
tooth
can see it.
saw. Yeah, yep.
And so all of that by hand. I'm guessing these are the type of things where you could use a C80 software and have it kind of made automatically with a somewhat
Yeah,
complex machine.
yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
but you
You
did,
have
yeah, but
to.
I mean, yeah, for jewelry, you want it to be handcrafted.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
So how did you do? How do you apply the paint?
So that's anodized. So it's a process where you're running an electric current
Yeah,
through a chemical bath with your aluminum, and then you add dyes to it when you open up the porous metal. Um, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It was my last big project before I
I can
graduated.
tell. I can tell in your voice that you really enjoyed it.
Mhm.
So okay, so you graduated from that art degree. You were on the path to create jewels. I guess maybe or did you think you were gonna it was gonna be your job after
No,
graduation? No.
I was pregnant with my first son right
Okay.
before I graduated. My plan was to pursue art therapy with a master's
Oh,
program after,
yeah.
but he changed my plans a little bit, and
But you
I was
graduated this time, right? You
I
did.
did, yes,
Okay.
yeah, I finished up my program, but yeah, I ended up going to work at a bank as a bank teller for temporary, and then I got into the job that I held for 5.5 years in
Okay.
manufacturing.
So still in the manufacturing space, sort of. Not art space, but manufacturing. I mean, metal.
Mhm.
Was it in metal manipulation as well?
It was, yeah, for, it was a dump truck manufacturer that
Okay.
made steel and aluminum dump bodies,
Okay.
yes.
So you were able to talk the language, the same language. You understood, the engineers and the folks that were talking around about. Yeah. So what were you doing over there? Actually, were you an
So
engineer there?
No, I was not. I ended up being a production control manager,
Okay.
and then I moved into the purchasing world after a while there. But it was kind of integrating, like, oh yeah, I know how to work with metal on a small scale. Like,
Yeah.
let's. I'm sure it's not that hard to figure out how to do it on a much larger scale. Which, truthfully, those skills do kind of transfer. It was
Yeah.
a lot more software and like
Yeah.
CAD, working with CAD software and nesting software.
So you were purchasing metal for that company at the end, near the end.
Yeah. Hmm.
Was it aluminum, or actually it's not metal per se?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was, yeah, it was it was aluminum and, steel, different kinds, and yeah, it was during the pandemic as well,
The
was when
reason
I
I'm asking
did the
is all
purchasing.
of a sudden that what came to my mind, which is totally out of topic. I saw a TikTok of Matt Rife doing crowd work, asking a woman in the audience, "What do you do?" And she says, "I cannot tell you. Not it's going to be weird. I can't tell you." And she said, "I'm a buyer." And he asked, "Well, what do you buy?" I'm buying aluminum."
Mhm.
And I can't remember the end of the joke or if there was one, but that felt out of 1 million possibilities that of someone's job. Did you enjoy it?
I did. I did for a long while. I've never touched any kind of manufacturing. I don't know anybody that
Yeah.
has. So that was very different. It was a lot to learn up front, and I would say the first year, every day was like a really big learning experience.
Oh yeah,
But then after a while, it started kind of to stagnate. Um, and I ended up getting handed the purchasing position as well, to
yeah,
manage those two departments. And
yeah.
I
Because
slowly grew.
I mean, from creating jewelry, manipulating metal,
Hmm.
to actually being a buyer, managing bids. I mean, it's there's a huge gap of knowledge and how to. So how did you acquire that? Was it on the job, like mentored by someone over there?
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, my path to where I'm at now was paved with a lot of people that
Yeah.
saw something and were willing to give me the chance of, hey, I can tell that you have the right attitude for this. You have, the right set of soft skills. Like, let's just bring you on and you can learn as you go. Yeah, so it
Yeah,
was
you
it was a lot
really
of
you
hands-on.
quickly became someone very trusted, and people were willing to make bets on your ability to learn and acquire new skills. That's all there is. So I'm looking at your LinkedIn right now.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so you worked there for like 5 years, 5 to 6 years, uh, and so and then you switched into something completely different. Um, can you tell us a little bit? Well, first, what made you want to quit that job, and where you did you at the time have in mind that you wanted to do something else? And yeah, and so what happened then? If you don't mind sharing a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, it was a very exciting position when I first started, and then it reinvigorated being like exciting to learn something new when I got into purchasing because that was another field I've never touched. It just slowly started losing that shine.
Mm,
I learned so many soft skills in that job. I accredit any of my people skills to working that position.
yeah,
In my management, I got to work with an amazing team there. I still talk to them now and keep up with them. It was really hard to leave the people, but I just couldn't see myself there in another 5 years. It was
yeah,
just one of those hard questions of you have to like wonder, am I gonna stay here forever? Because if not, like, I'm not getting any younger, I would like to
mhm,
maybe make that change now if this isn't the place. So I started looking into, other choices that I could be making for a career, and a lot of careers do feel very closed off to you once you've hit a certain point. I already went for my four-year degree.
yeah,
I was not gonna go back for another 4. I already had, two boys at that time, and I just got married, and I did not have the time for another college degree. So, thinking about things that I could either just switch over to, kind of like how I got into manufacturing, where I could just worm my
yeah,
way in and learn the ropes on the job, or something I could do, kind of like a special workshop, a Udemy or a boot camp. I ended up talking to my uncle, who is a senior software developer, and my husband's cousin is a CTO, and they both gave me amazing advice
Mm.
on the field. I I looked back at high school. I did take one HTML class once, and I was like, "Yeah, that was pretty cool," you know. Yeah,
Just like you remember that you liked the art class, you remember that you liked the HTML class.
yeah, it worked out
Yeah,
for those 4 years. So,
yeah.
yeah, so I ended up talking to them in detail and asking them and like any experiences that they had to share with other people that they knew in a similar situation, and it sounded like boot camps were the way to go.
So you say that like if it was obvious, but that was in 2023, right? That was early 2023 or even late 2022.
Uh, that would have been it was around 2022, 2021, 2022, where I started kind of dabbling with,
Yeah.
like, hey, what is coding actually though? Because I know it's not just this basic HTML and
Hmm.
changing a plate page from red to blue. Like, what does this entail? Is this something I'm interested
Yeah.
in?
And how did you? So did you go straight to thinking that you had to join a coding bootcamp, or was there some time for you to kind of learn on your own? You just mentioned Udemy. What was that thought process for you of wanting to change careers, evaluate the coding world, and then making the decision that well maybe a coding bootcamp is the way to go?
Sure. So, the job that I was holding was a really well-paying position, and
Mhm.
it was hard to leave for that reason as
Yeah.
well. Knowing that I would have to take a step down in pay no matter what
Oh,
I
you
did.
would. That's what you were contemplating, a step down. Usually people are hoping for a step up. But
Yeah,
yeah,
ideally, but yeah,
yeah,
it's realistically, I knew it was going to be a decent step down,
wow,
because it's the career that needs to interest me. I
yeah,
can always work my way back up and prove myself and get back to a certain pay point, but
yeah.
yeah, the interest was in the actual tasks that I was doing.
Hmm.
So after I talked to those people and got inspired to like, okay, well maybe that's the route I should go. I did invest in Codecademy.
Yeah.
I did that for probably like a year and a half.
Oh, that's pretty
I
good already. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, I did. It was just kind of passive as I had
Hmm.
time. I had a newborn, so
Yeah.
as much time as I get with that. And I was taking the Python module because that was just the easy one that everybody was saying, hey, like that's a good baseline to start.
Hmm.
Um, and I was going through this module thinking, okay, like, yeah, I understand this now. I understand list. I understand how to, like pick up all these different concepts. But it kept going on and on and on.
Yeah. But then what?
And
Like what do I do now? What I
exactly.
understand it, but how am I going to apply it? And yeah, what's the next step, pretty much?
Exactly, and I saw ahead of me was, okay, I just finished Python module 1, what there's 2 and 3, and where do I stop? Where can I have a
Hmm.
finish line that says,
Yeah.
"I know Python," when I go to talk to an employer?
Yeah, that's a
Um,
very good point. It seems obvious as well, and it seems easy to solve, but it's not because you don't really have a frame of reference necessarily.
mhm.
Um, and the other question is, you spent a year and a half. Were you able to finish? So you finished module one. Then were you happy with that progress? Or I know a lot of times people are kind of frustrated with themselves of not making enough progress or not being able to complete.
Yeah, so I supplemented it with some other modules too.
Hmm.
I took like another basic HTML and a CSS, and I was working through some of those, especially because looking at job openings, there's not just like one thing listed on any of those.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to grab a few of like the ones that I knew were going to be low hanging fruit, pretty easy to pick up. And then I was in the process of starting to figure out like, okay, well, what's the stack that I'm interested in? And I was talking to, my family members, and I was looking in different communities and watching different podcasters. And I was starting in those podcasts trying to figure out what stacks to look at and
Oh yeah.
what's the advice now. I started hearing about different boot camps, and
Mm.
I started writing down like the names of each one that I had some interest in, and I started doing some deep dive research, I would say for probably about 6 months or so.
Oh wow. So you researched the coding bootcamp industry for 6 months. Oh, I'm curious about the rankings and the pros and cons. I know where you landed. I'll just make a pause. So if you're just joining us, Bianca is a former student and now full stack developer. Um, you can ask your questions if you're listening to us. We're live right now. I mean, as of November 1st, 2:21 p.m. We're live. So ask your questions on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, where we're streaming live. We'll get your question, answer them. There we go. And Ludovic has one here. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, echoing what you just said about being a self-taught learner and the challenges of that. So let me ask you then, during that research, what were your criteria first? What were you really looking for in a coding bootcamp? And what made you ultimately decide to join Nucamp?
So I was looking for flexibility first and
Yeah.
foremost,
Mhm.
and cost expense was definitely the runner up
Yeah.
for where I was at in life. I'm supporting, my family, and I am also very burdened with my time with that family. So I wasn't able to put in a full time boot camp into that schedule. I was still holding my job down the whole time. I
I
I
was going to
couldn't.
say you still had your job, so it was really nights and
Mhm,
weekends for you, plus the newborn
mhm.
and okay and everything else. Okay.
Yes. Yes, and I'm a social creature too. So I know a lot of people say like I cut off communication for this. I can't do that. So I had to really balance my time
Yeah.
out as best I could, and honestly my husband helped so much with that. He took on a huge load with taking care of the kids and
Mhm.
making sure I had time to come down here and work on whatever I was, up to at that moment. Um yeah.
Okay, so flexibility, I mean cost, quality ratio. How are you doing with the workshops? Were you able to attend? And so did you have to reschedule, for example? Did you reschedule? Were you able to really follow the modules one after the others? How was it for you, the experience?
There was one time I ended up rescheduling to push it
Okay.
off to finish up
Yeah.
some of the workshops, yes.
Mhm.
And there were a couple, I think there was one or two that I had to skip out because of a sick kid
Okay.
or
Yeah.
something was going on. But the instructors were so nice, so flexible about it. As long as you were participating and, there and giving an honest effort during the other, classes that you were there, it was nice to have that. And yeah, I was able to make it because I was able to pick what hours I needed,
Mhm.
and that was something that I sat down and really uh, cleared my calendar for those.
Yeah.
But being able to work on stuff outside of class, like all the workshop in between workshop work, that was huge to be able to pick my own time, just do it whenever I can.
That's awesome. And remind us, which bootcamp did you attend? Was it the Python one then, or was it the full stack, the React one?
I did the entire
Oh, you did
package.
the complete
Yeah.
one.
hmm
Oh, so when you say you didn't complete, you did way more than many. So which modules did you complete and which did you not complete then?
Oh, Ludo, that was a while ago.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
I
So, but
got
that's it.
through.
So you signed up for web development fundamentals, or did you skip that
Yes,
one?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And then
that
you
one's
went
done,
on
yeah.
to full stack,
Yes,
and then you
yeah,
went on to the Python one.
yes.
And you probably have skipped the job hunting portion because you already
I
have a
did
job.
yeah, I did clip
Right.
that one off. I had not started that one
Okay,
yet, so
but you did everything else. So okay,
yes,
so you did like what, like 8 9 months of study with us?
yes,
Yeah, something like
yes.
that. Okay, wow, 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 wow. Oh, huge. Okay, great. Um, all right, well, that's impressive. Yeah, and a lot of students share with us, that part time and flexibility is key. That's one thing that I also discuss with students when they graduate. Did you join the graduation party? Then I'm sure. Did you?
I didn't actually,
Okay,
it was happening the same night I had an event going on with my son,
there
so
you go.
I was unable to make it, which was a
That's okay.
bummer.
All right, no, no worries. So there's one thing. Actually, there's a few things that I want to touch on with you. Looking at, we did a write up of your journey. So if anyone is interested in additional details, look up Bianca Ploss Nucamp, and you'll find the write up in our blog. One thing that's uh, really cute, I will say, is your interest also was not just, I guess, it was as well driven by your family members, but also by something else. Do you mind sharing with us what this other thing is about?
Um, so I have been into games for a long time. So when I say games, I mean like tabletop RPGs.
Hmm.
I got very into D&D when I met my husband. That was like a big bonding thing for us
Oh,
and
this is
our
cool.
friend group.
Yeah.
Um, and playing different like card games and things like that. But yeah, D&D is something that is very special to me, and it's something that I've been trying to come up with better ideas of how to make it more efficient, so it can be more fun, so it's less work for me to set up games for my friends.
So I'm not super into D&D. I'm into games a little bit, but I have a good friend who's playing D&D, and I know there's a special role. Is it? Are you the master, or what is the name of the role?
Yeah, so it's a dungeon master that runs
Yeah,
the game.
yeah.
Yep, for all
Are
the
you a
players.
dungeon master?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. So that was in that context that you were thinking about. Okay, how can I make it better? And
Yes. So you get these things like you have stat blocks for different monsters,
yeah.
and creatures, and um, if anybody is out there that plays D&D and feels my pain, there's a there's a system called the challenge rating,
Hmm.
in the current edition, and it's not the greatest. So basically, the challenge rating is supposed to tell you, for a certain party of characters, at a certain level, this is how difficult the encounter should be, like if you're battling it out. And that system is not the best. So that is something that I've been trying to work on. My personal project that got me my job
Hmm.
today. That was something that I presented to them at my interview.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Nice.
yeah. It's a different take on coming up with the equivalent of that challenge rating
Yeah.
system.
Oh, this is cool. Before we continue, there's a
Sure.
question here again from Ludovic, um, and we'll go back to D&D. How did you deal with problem solving skills, and did you have to learn data structure and algorithm? I would think before.
Gotcha. So problem solving skills when I started. So I got thrown into the frying pan right out the bat, which is such a good thing. Um, it's a small team that I work with, so everybody wears a lot of hats, and luckily they knew that they were signing up like with a new person that needed a lot of training from the get go. So they have been incredibly patient with problem solving. It's great to rubber duck it. That is like
Oh
the
yeah.
biggest thing, I think when you're starting out is to be able to talk it out, maybe
Uh-huh.
even like out loud to an inanimate object.
Do you have a rubber
That's the
duck on
rubber
your desk?
ducking. Yeah, I have the equivalent. I have
Yeah,
like a little pop Funko, but
I'm looking for
um,
one right here. I don't have one.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that
Well,
that
I
is
guess I
such
have
a
that. Not exactly. No, doesn't look like a rubber duck at all.
yeah, it's beneficial because then you're really developing your speaking skills as far as problem solving goes, and that is so critical when you're working on a team,
Mhm.
especially a smaller team where you're working closely with other individuals that might not think the same way that you do. Um, Especially having that new developer brain too. Like we don't know all of the lingo, all the
Mhm.
jargon, that these seniors do. So it is really good practice. And as far as algorithms go, no, I did not have to learn any of that off the bat.
And this is so important. I mean, there's a movement, a huge movement in the coding bootcamp industry and aspiring developer world where you have to spend countless hours on lead code. You have to achieve, level 100 of whatever. And understanding algorithm is super important, but it's also not necessarily part of the critical path. And it's not because you're going to reach 100 level on lead code that you're going to be a great developer, and vice versa. So it's great to hear you say that. Hey, you didn't have to obsess about your level of proficiency on data structure and algorithm. You have to know enough. I think you have to know enough to be able to move forward in your learning.
Mhm,
But if you focus just on that way too much and you ignore the rest, the skill is going to be useless, right? I think
mhm,
you want to gain the data structure and algorithm knowledge as you go along, and you're going to learn it when you need it, because you're going to be faced with problems, and you're going to be like, damn, You have a piece of code that goes through an array, and all of a sudden it takes 5 minutes, and you're like, maybe there's something better to be done here. So yeah, it's great to hear you say that. Let's take one more question from Teddy here, um, from LinkedIn. Can you guys advise me? I graduated with a degree in computer science, but my college mainly emphasized Java, which is the case in many organization, colleges, university. Java is, as part of computer science, still the number one stack that is used. Python is starting to replace it, but it's always been mainly Java, just to learn the fundamentals. That's not my favorite, to be honest with you. It's overcomplicated, but anyways. Therefore, I'm considering enrolling in a boot camp. Should I learn for training in full stack or cybersecurity? Do you want to take a stab at it? I'll give my 2 cents. What would you say?
It depends on what you enjoy. I see so many people asking like, "Oh, what's the stack?" The same question I was asking
Yeah.
before. And I honestly just recommend checking out some free coding resources like Free Code Camp or maybe some of the free courses that Codecademy has,
Hmm.
just to start getting your feet wet on like what interests you, because it really doesn't matter what's as popular if you don't care about it. You're gonna
Yeah.
hate your job.
Yeah.
It's all about what really drives you. So if that would be more the cybersecurity, or the Java is pretty complicated. So if you're digging into that, that has to be something that is more attractive to you.
Yeah. And I was going to say, if you're looking for something that complements your existing knowledge, I will go with full stack. That will really continue on the path of computer science. That will have you switch over to JavaScript, which is not Java, but kind of similar in a way. And that will really complement what you've learned theoretically in the computer science space. Um, that said, as you know, the market is a bit saturated right now, kind of saturated, and there may be more opportunities with cybersecurity. So if you're just looking at from a lens of, okay, how can I get a job like fast? May want to look around you. What are the cybersecurity positions available? What are the full stack position available in your city? Or let's draw a circle. I don't know, 20 miles radius, uh, and then make your decision from that standpoint. I think you completing a computer science is going to be beneficial no matter what. Um, you'll have to explain why you switch from computer science to cybersecurity. You may actually want to blend those two together. In cybersecurity, there's a little bit of coding as well. Um, and so I will look into that. But yeah, thank you. So let's go back to. And by the way, anyone else, if you have any question for Bianca or myself, don't hesitate to ask it on wherever you're watching us right now, YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. So D&D, you're a dungeon master. So you worked on a project that was your personal portfolio project that you did
Yes.
during the
Yes,
boot
it
camp.
was. Uh-huh. Yeah,
Nice.
so it was actually everything that I did in the boot camp is what I turned over as my portfolio, including
Nice.
this D&D project. This
Uh,
was like one of those work on your own idea kind of posts
Yeah.
to utilize different skills that we learned through the boot camp. So yeah, I did not have to spend any of my outside of class time on my portfolio in this situation. But the game that I made, it was a Python program, and it was using classes and um, calculating what your characters, you had like inputs, what your characters were in the game, what levels they were. And then I was having generic stat blocks for the different classes that you can play in
Nice.
D&D. I was kind of averaging out some of the stats, and then I started adding a couple monsters into my little database, my
Mhm.
my little list in there that was
Nice.
eventually going to develop into that. But so it had different monster stat blocks in there, and then I had it simulate 100 battles between these two. Um,
Oh, you built a simulator as well.
mhm.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I called it Battle Simulator, but
Uh-huh.
yeah. So then it simulated 100 battles between them, and it gave a percentage of how often the player character would win.
Oh, and then that's what you use to assign whatever the metric you talked about, and I can't remember the
The
name.
challenge rating, yeah.
The challenge rating. There you go.
Hmm.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And so you use that. You actually talked about that project for the role. And so, which role are we talking about? Are we talking about the one where you are a QA developer, or the other one?
So that was my permanent position at Davy. Yeah,
Okay.
my QA developer position. That was a very lucky role that I got from my husband's cousin. He's the
Okay.
CTO of Vendera.
That
Um,
helps tremendously.
yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I credit a lot of a lot of my success to that role of getting something, on my resume, and being able to work part time doing QA testing. So
Mhm.
I got to write some code in C sharp over there.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I mean, also on this point, there's some people are looking down at the QA developer role and the career prospect, um, thinking that you could be stuck in that position or in that career for a long time. And it's true that one could be stuck, but it doesn't have to be. I think what you said earlier in terms of I want to be able to learn all the time. I want to be able to evolve over time. I want to be able to demonstrate that. I think these are the traits and the skills that are going to allow you to move from being a in a QA position to a full-time developer, I will say. And you just proved it. So brilliant. I have one more question for you, because even though you said earlier that when in your first year of college, you realized that I think you said science is not my forte, or I realized I didn't like necessarily the science path that I was taking on. You kind of did a 180 on this one, but at the same time, people are always worried that to have a career in tech, you have to be great at math. You have to love math. Um, what's your take on that? Like, how much do you love math? How much do you have to be brilliant at math? What are you saying to those folks that are really worried that it's going to be a blocker for them if they want to have a career in tech?
I really don't. It depends on the role, obviously. Like if you're working with certain technologies, or your program is more around facts and figures, yeah, you probably have to have a decent solid understanding of math, but that's not the case in a lot of it. It's more of a logic puzzle, I like to
Mhm.
think.
Yeah.
It's a lot less like formulas, like thinking, like algebra. It's less of that, more of, okay, if I do this, then what?
It's
And then
logical thinking.
yes, exactly. It's just one big logic puzzle with.
If then, loops. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree
Yep,
with you.
and then also adding in like what tool do you need for what job, and understanding, the pros and cons of different things and how they link together, and um it's, yeah, I would say it's more logic though than math for
Yeah.
sure.
And let's look at what Teddy wants to share with us, and then we'll take your question, Ludovic. In college, the focus is mainly on JavaScript. Okay, great. Other React HTML. Okay, so if you really want to dive into React and HTML, then I will go with the full stack bootcamp. That will definitely build on that. And then Ludovic is, I think, responding to a point that I made to Teddy regarding software engineering versus cybersecurity. Um, is it not currently worthy? I think, Bianca, you're an example of how worthy it can be, but it's harder than before. Um, and so, yeah, let me actually put it back up. It's harder than before, and it depends on what I will say to that is it's going to be a lot about your local environment, where you really want to think about your next job as being a in-person position, not necessarily remote. You want to look at what's available to you in your surroundings, and that could mean in your state, or if you live in a big city, in that city. Uh, that means networking the way you've done it, or other ways. But that's it's going to be more challenging, but not impossible. And so, yeah. And we have Dean here. Dean is part of the team. If that's the same Dean, and I think he is because I recognize the thumbnail. Hello, Dean. All right. So Uh, okay. Let's add another dimension to our conversation because not only you've had a really interesting path uh, from art design, sculpting, to procurement, to QA. You've also said that you're a social individual, and I think you've demonstrated that in your involvement with local communities, including communities of women. Do you want to share with us a little bit what you've done in that space, what accomplishments you've had, what you're proud of?
Yes, absolutely. So I joined up with Women Who Code before I was a coder. Um,
Oh,
this was
did
during
you have the
the,
imposter syndrome? Like, I'm a woman, but I don't code just yet.
but I support you. Yeah. Yeah, this was when I was going through my period of going through all these podcasts and like
Yeah.
just collecting information by mass. I got involved with my local chapter, just listening in to some other talks and hearing about the market and what was going on locally as well.
Mhm.
They had fantastic lessons and workshops offered up for free too, so no harm, attending those. And honestly, that really helped with picking up a lot of the jargon as well. 'Cause that's like a big sink at the beginning of
Yeah,
just
exactly.
what are these words? What what are we talking about now? But yeah, I got involved with them, and I got more involved as a chapter head for the Cleveland chapter.
So you
That was
joined as a member and then you became the chapter head?
Yes, around the same time that I was
Nice.
I was doing the QA development position. So I was kind of like,
Nice.
okay, this is official. I have this
Yeah.
on my resume. Hey, do you guys need any
You're one
help? Like,
woman who really codes now.
yes, yeah. Like I actually have like a title now, so like I want
Yeah.
to get in here and see what I
Nice.
can help with. And luckily for me, they had a position open for that at that
Yeah.
time. So very unfortunately, they've disbanded since back in
That
April.
was gonna say they closed.
They did, yeah, they
Yeah.
unfortunately went out of business, which is a real bummer, but, when purse strings get tight, those, equality groups are usually the first to lose their funding, so,
Yeah.
but in the meantime, while we were doing that, we were in the works of getting some more in-person meetups because a lot of that stuff ceased since COVID,
Mhm.
so we were starting to meet up for leadership teams and make some plans for that. But we did a lot of workshops online, some videos, some video calls for soft skills. That was primarily what I was doing at the time, since I didn't have much to offer in the technical,
Mhm.
advice sense. But it was great to really network and meet people, and a lot of people were in the same position as me, or even earlier on, the lurkers trying to figure out if this was the right career field. And that was really encouraging to see so many women that were
Yeah.
interested in it.
Did you so when I looked at LinkedIn, I saw that you were connected with Krisa in the team.
Hmm.
Um, and I think you were awarded the Google Women in Tech Scholarship,
I sure
correct?
was. Hmm.
So, are you did you get involved with Women in Tech, the Google groups at all? Are you still trying to help those communities?
So I haven't gotten directly involved with the Google and tech, but when Women in Who Code was still around, I was
Mhm.
working really closely with Krissa to um, make a partnership up with that and try to get the two bridges,
Yeah,
together. But right now, I actually do. I help co-champion a employee affinity group at Davy Tree
nice.
for it's called Women's Plus. So it has the same goal in mind. Davy is a landscaping company, so we have a lot of female arborists, which is another field that is heavily male dominated.
Mm.
So it's the same passion, just a different context. Um,
So let's talk about your current position. And there's a very interesting post of yours that I think you posted it last month, where you were celebrating your first year there. What do you do? What do you do over there? I think you mentioned the app. What is the app about? What do you do with the app and everything?
So it's a suite of different tools.
Okay,
I mainly have worked on landscape planting and species there. Check it out. It's a free tool. It is primarily to help with urban forestry planning.
Hmm.
So it is a tool that typically you'll see scientists using. There's a lot that's the sciencey part of it, but
Yeah.
luckily I haven't had to get my hands too far into any of that yet. But um,
You
it's
don't have to go deep into geometry.
yeah, right. Yeah, and we've I've done some stuff with GIS too, with mapping, which has been very different. But the position that I have, like I said, it's a very small team, so we all
Hmm.
kind of get to do a little bit of everything, which is great for the position that I'm
Yeah.
in. Just like we were talking to Teddy earlier about like kind of getting a good flavor of what you're interested in. This is definitely mine of like, do I like the front end? Do I like the back end? Do
Hmm.
what speaks to me? And I'm learning everything in between. I have an amazing teacher, Kevin Whalen, over there at the
Shout
institute,
out,
and
Kevin, if you're
yes,
listening.
and it's been awesome. The team that I work with is all very willing to help me learn and have the patience for like some of my, there is no dumb question, but my dumb questions of what are you guys talking about? Like I have no, you lost me 10 minutes ago. Um, but yeah, I've done like a lot of UI,
Okay.
the little fixes, kind of the typical what an intern would probably start off doing. That's kind of where they put
Mhm.
me, knowing that I came from a boot camp without any real like work experience outside of QA.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I've
That's
done
nice.
that. I've worked on some of our back end
Okay.
back end
What is the
systems.
stack, if you can share any of it?
Sure, yeah, we primarily are using like Python, Django.
Okay.
That's what I've been working on upgrading. I've been working on updating it from like Django 1.11 to 4.2. So that was
Oh
my
wow, that's
first like
big.
work
Yeah,
task. Yeah.
that's a big
Uh,
one.
yeah, we're
Scary.
partially yes, we're partially government funded. So these
Yeah.
are things that will fall on the wayside, and that's something that I think you're not really prepared to do as a boot
Mhm.
camper. It's because you're talking about the new technology. Well, there's a lot of companies that are, behind on
Yeah,
that, and
I
you have to
like
help bring
I
them
like
up.
hearing you say that, because as a coding bootcamp, sometimes you struggle with wanting to be always on the latest technology or the latest version. But I know personally that students are going to be exposed to, hey, this is, Django 1.0, and you're going to have to work with that, and you're going to have to upgrade it. And the skill of upgrading code and refactoring code, it's not taught, right? We
Hmm.
don't really, but it's actually super valuable.
Hmm.
And really understanding how, how you used to, this piece of code used to work, and how it works, and the cascading effect it can have on the whole code base. We don't teach it, and in a sense we do if we actually don't always upgrade. But we actually, for example, we can have the bootcamp using React, let's say 16, but tell the student, your personal project, you better use React 18. And so they see the difference. They can think about, okay, I used to do it this way, now I'm doing it this way. It's actually a great mental exercise. The challenge is usually students don't appreciate it, because the students are like, how are you teaching me React 16 when 18 is the latest version? And you're like, you want to say, well, but it's actually good for you. It never lands very well, actually. But yeah, I'm glad to hear you that. So are you enjoying that work of refactoring code and upgrading code bases?
It was honestly one of the best ways to get started, I think.
Mm,
It's definitely not like a long term, I want to do this every day
yeah,
kind of thing. And luckily, since again, small team, I get like little other tasks sprinkled in. So
yeah.
I do get to work on some new features, which is super exciting. But yeah, it was great to get in there and like learn how to use documentation. That's something that I did skip over when I was doing my new camp
Oh yeah.
courses, where I'd see these links and it'd be like, check out the documentation. I'm
Yes.
like, all right, I have time for that, and I'd skip past it. But I mean, that's something that is so critical to learn
Oh,
because
in the real world, you spend most of your time in the documentation, and then ChatGPT, if ChatGPT has
yeah.
read the documentation for you.
Hmm.
Yeah, you know the
Yeah.
acronym, right? RTFM.
No. Mm-mm.
You don't know this acronym, RTFM?
Mm-mm.
I don't know if maybe the video is going to be banned if I spell it out. It's
Oh.
read the effing
uh,
manual.
yeah.
Read
Yeah.
the effing manual. That's so if you have a rookie next, and you're coaching him, and you want to have fun, you say, hey, RTFM. Yeah, RTFM.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, But I'm sure as well, having your experience in QA, I mean, a lot of refactoring code and upgrading code to a new version is about regression testing, QAing. So that must have helped also you, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that the practices that I learned while doing that really help with how I do my work as a developer.
Yeah.
Not necessarily coming in as a new person and driving changes on the team, but as I'm developing or I'm putting code in, I'm thinking, how is this going to test later? Like,
Yeah.
how can I make something around this to make sure that it doesn't fail? How
Yeah.
can I word this or build my code so another developer can come in here and see it and know exactly what I'm trying to
Yeah.
accomplish?
So your company and yourself, which camp are you in? Are you in the camp of saying you should have as little documentation as possible in the code because it should read by itself and it should be easy enough to understand that you don't need to maintain the documentation as well? Or are you more in the camp of saying, no, no, every function has to be well documented? We also have to have a separate documentation that talks about it. Like, which camp are you in right now?
Like any good truth, I'm somewhere in between.
Okay.
I feel like your code should be pretty self-explanatory, but if you need to go into further detail, it needs to be written down somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. This is really great. Folks over there who are listening to us, please ask your questions to Bianca and myself. Uh, Teddy, your question about which one is the most in demand. I think in general, overall, there's a lot of interest in cybersecurity, but I also believe that it's going to be what's surrounding you that's going to be relevant. And as I said, look into your city if you live nearby a big city, look into your state, and really look at the positions that are close to you because the expectation nowadays is you're going to show up in person, you're going to be in the office, and you also want to leverage that opportunity to build social relations with the potential employer, with the hiring manager, with and do a coffee chat or something like that. So yeah, you live in LA, so that's yeah. Look around, look around LA. Look at the positions, look at the companies with whom you have an affiliation to some extent. Like I don't know, if you had a job during your college education in I don't know restoration or hospitality, and there's an opening in cybersecurity at Hilton hotels. You have a story to tell. You can say a few things about that, and maybe you worked at a Hilton and you know it. But I think it's all about storytelling. It's all about being able to connect with a worker over there, the hiring manager, and kind of differentiating yourself that way. So yes, there's in general potentially more demand in cybersecurity, but you could find the perfect fit in full stack for a company that's 2 blocks down your street, and it may just work as well. So no absolute answer on this one.
Yeah, I very much so agree on the local job listings are the way to go.
So I was
I
going to say, so is that what happened for you? Like the company that you're, and it's if we can say the name, it is
yes, yeah.
David Tree
Yes,
Expert
it's
Company.
6 minutes down the road from my
There
house,
you go.
so it
Ah,
worked out. But yeah, I'm in Northeast Ohio, so I was looking up as far as Cleveland. That was where
yeah,
I had my other interview. Um, but I put probably like 150 job applications out within 2 months, and I heard back from just a few, and they were all local. Um,
exactly.
yeah, that is absolutely the way to go.
150 applications. How many interviews did you go through?
2.
Two. Oh wow, that's pretty good.
Mhm.
Um, in about like 2 months, 2 months
Yeah,
time.
yeah, it was about 2 months that I was actually putting the applications out, and then I got the interviews were pretty back to back, a couple weeks apart.
That's
Mhm.
great. What do you think? So again, we hear a ton of stories of students being very let down by the application process itself. Like they're spending 4 hours a day applying on LinkedIn and they don't hear from anything. Like, how did you do it? Do you think you approached it maybe a little differently? Because even I mean, 100 applications, 2 interviews, one job is amazing. I mean, the ratio between application and interviews is not great, but at the end that you got a job is pretty good. Any lesson learned from that standpoint?
Yeah, definitely not trying to apply to remote positions. That was
Yeah,
number one.
yeah,
But working on those soft skills too. If you have the personality or come across that you have the personality of a piece of
Yeah.
cardboard, you're very unlikely to get hired at the end of the day. It doesn't really matter what your skills are. If you can't work well on a team or communicate,
Mhm.
that's not going to be your spot. So,
Yeah.
um, instead of blasting through job applications, work on those maybe through different workshops, especially the career boot camp that Nucamp has, doing mock interviews and maybe getting some advice from an unbiased source. I'm sure there's something local too, just generic interviews, just to work on those talks. Do something like a local Toastmasters
Yeah.
to learn how to speak to other people, do public speaking, just to kind of put yourself out there and challenge yourself in a different way outside of code, because that's going to make you stand out amongst all the other applicants.
And that's great. And Ludovic is sharing that you live in Tacoma, which I know quite well, actually. I'm in Seattle, I'm in Bellevue. Tough to connect with people. It's easier now that COVID is behind us. I would really encourage you to attend meetups, in-person meetups, job fairs. Go out and meet in person as much as possible. I think that's the key nowadays, to pierce through, the hundreds or thousands of applicants that are, to your point, just clicking a quick apply on LinkedIn. Yeah. So, where do you see yourself in, let's say, I don't know, 5 years?
Honestly, probably on the same team,
Yeah.
because it is such a great launch pad for me. I've been to 2 developer conferences in this past year that I've been
Mhm.
there, which is awesome that my company wants me to keep growing. And there's so many more facets to learn while I'm here. Um, but yeah, it's definitely something that I'm going to see myself continue to push myself out of my comfort zone. I'm planning on trying to write up some talk proposals for some of the conferences that I attended this year, just to kind of force myself to keep growing,
No,
right?
this is great. Yeah.
Yeah, to keep learning, and that would be another bit of advice for job hunters too. If you can afford to go, put yourself through some kind of tech conference, because I network like crazy at those things. It's great to go and meet people
Are
in
you
real life.
organizing dungeon games at the conferences? No?
Yeah, yeah, at the hotel afterwards, yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, but those are also a great networking opportunity,
Yeah.
and you learn something while you're there too. Yeah, but constantly moving
So
forward and
you have found the career that you really wanted to stay into. Back to the procurement job that you had, or the. I want to ask you that question. You mentioned that, hey, you knew you had to take a pay cut, which is usually not the way people think when they get a job in tech. It's now your second job in tech after QA. Without revealing anything, and if you're comfortable saying, like, did you go back at least to the level of compensation you were before? Did you exceed it, or what's the what is the situation there?
yeah, I am just about back to even with what I was
Nice.
making before. So, yeah, like I said, it was like a temporary thing because the
Yeah.
passion's there, and the drive to learn. So it's just a matter of time before, you crawl back up there. And worst case, if that wasn't the situation and it wasn't a livable situation, then I have a year of, experience on my resume and I can go on to the next venture.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really worked out, and I'm very there's what it's very lucky where preparation, meets opportunity and all
Yeah.
that.
And the career progression then for you was pretty good. Like, you found a different job in 2 years, and then you got a pay raise as well, which is what people also need to factor in. I think the pay levels for junior developers right now, or junior anything in tech, is probably lower than it used to be. But I think the velocity and the career acceleration is still there for them.
Mhm.
Unlike other profession potentially, where maybe the way you felt before, right? You kind of feel like, I'm actually stuck. Like, I could be in the same position 10 years from now without much progress. That's still very different in tech, where you can make a ton of move upward, as an individual contributor, or becoming people manager and things like that. Is that something that actually, and we're going to be out of time very soon, but are you interested in people management position as well? Like, is that part of your outlook?
I'm not really thinking that far ahead yet, to be
Yeah,
honest, but I did it before and it was something that I really enjoyed and was decently passionate about. So yeah, that is something that would be on my radar, but
nice.
I'm finally ready to put myself first on those, like being able to develop my own
Yeah,
skills and when the time comes, maybe possibly.
awesome. Well, Bianca, do you have any last word of wisdom that you would like to share with the audience?
Don't give up. It's so worth it. If this is something that you enjoy doing, if this logic puzzle that you
Mhm.
enjoy, um, just keep going. Talk to people, reach out, talk to people in the field. They will almost always encourage you. Reach out to me. There's tons of people in New Camp in that Discord that are so supportive. But you can get through this. It's a little rough when you first start out, but it will click one day for you, and it'll lead you where you want to go.
Well, thank you very much on behalf of everyone. We were blessed and super proud of your accomplishment, Bianca. Thank you so much. And let's stay in touch. Wish you the best. Oh, we didn't talk about things about Halloween. I wanted to ask if you had anything. Anyway, next time. I missed that one. All right. No worries.